Thank you, Air Marshal Bharti. So, ladies and gentlemen, he's outlined operations not only on the night of 6th and 7th of May, when Operation Sindoor commenced, but also on the subsequent night. Being well aware and familiar with the congenital and impulsive nature of our adversary, and even though we did attempt to reach out and communicate our compulsions to strike at the heart of terror to my counterpart in the immediate wake of Operation Sindoor, the request was brusquely turned down, with an intimation that a severe response was inevitable and in the offing. We were of course prepared. Operations on the 7th and the 8th, Air Marshal Bharti spoken about. On the night of 8th and 9th of May, they flew drones and aircrafts into our airspace all across the borders and made largely unsuccessful attempts to target numerous military infrastructure. Violations on the line of control by Pakistan also commenced yet again and precipitated into fierce arty engagements. The air operations on the night of 8th and 9th of May, I'll yet again request the DG Air Operations to cover.
So I just covered what happened on the night of 7th and 8th. What we found that on the night of 8th and 9th, starting as early as 22:30 hours, our cities had a mass raid of drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, UCAVs, starting right from Srinagar, going down right up to Nalia. It was a mass raid in waves and it was relentless. However, we were prepared and our air defense preparedness ensured that there is no damage on ground or to any of the intended targets that the enemy might have planned for. The difference between 7th night and 8th night was that on 7th night, he sent in his Yeha class of UAVs, however, these UAVs can go some distance, they are armed. However, on the 8th, less numbers of armed UCAVs were there or UAVs were there, and more numbers of quadcopters, maybe for surveillance or just for harassment of civilians. This continued till midnight. Our air defense preparedness ensured that there was no damage on the ground, either to the military installations or to the civilians. However, the enemy had yet again shown that he wanted to up the ante and he wanted a fight, and we were up to the task. In a measured and calibrated response, we once again targeted his military installations, which included his SAM sites at Malirkant. This also included his surveillance radar sites at Lahore and close to Gujranwala. These were suitably addressed, and thereafter his drone attacks continued even till morning, which we countered, and during the daytime there was some respite. Here I would like to bring out another aspect. What we found was that while the drone attacks were being launched from somewhere close to Lahore, enemy had allowed his civilian aircraft to also continue to fly out of Lahore. Not only his own aircraft, but international passenger aircraft, which is quite insensitive, and we had to exercise extreme caution, even at the cost of some tactical disadvantage, to ensure that there is no damage to any of the civilian aircraft. And this was also brought out in a press briefing during the day. So I will now hand over to my colleague to cover the events of 9th onwards.
On land, we also undertook certain measures such as deployment of air defense and electronic warfare assets to establish an integrated grid with the Indian Air Force, and I have seen and heard some of you wax eloquent about the benefits of such an architecture when it comes to negating and combating air intrusions. We also carried out deployment to include movement of our forces in the land, sea, and air domains. The night of the 9th and the 10th of May saw similar intrusions by drones and aircrafts, and this time there was a concerted effort to target airfields and some very, very important logistic installations, albeit yet again unsuccessful and denied gallantly and efficiently, I must say, by the integrated Indian Air Force and Indian Army Air Defense. We further strengthened our deployment and also initiated some pressure points to send a very clear and unambiguous message to the other side to desist from any misadventures on land. Some of the airfields and dumps saw repeated attacks in waves from the air. All were thwarted. The Pakistan Army has reported to have lost approximately 35 to 40 personnel in artillery and small arms firing on the line of control between the 7th and the 10th of May. What the other side had probably also not reckoned with was the speedy and precise turnaround and hit back by the Indian Air Force. And I will yet again ask Air Marshal Bharti to speak about these significant and game-changing strikes. I will thereafter request Vice Admiral Pramod, my colleague and Director General of Naval Operations, to tell us about some very telling naval maneuvers in the Arabian Sea that exerted pressure on the night of 9th and 10th of May. Over to you, sir.
Commencing about 2000 hours, that is 8 p.m. local time, on 8th of May, several Pakistani unmanned aerial systems, drones, combat vehicles attacked multiple IF bases. These included Jammu, Udhampur, Pathankot, Amritsar, Bhatinda, Nal, Dalhousie, Thois, Jaisalmer, Uttarlai, Falodi, Nalia. These were almost simultaneous and they came in waves. All our AD guns and other systems were waiting for them. All these waves were neutralized by our trained crew using the air defense systems that they have, and also some of them were utilized using our legacy systems like Pechoras and IF Summer, which we have recently acquired, and some were neutralized by the Garud snipers. There was no damage on ground from these incursions and these mass raids, if I could call them, from the Pakistani side. However, following these relentless attacks on our air bases, on our forward positions, and on our civilian targets, this was time to convey some message to our adversaries. And therefore, a decision was taken to strike where it would hurt. And towards that, in a swift, coordinated, calibrated attack, we struck his air bases, command centers, military infrastructure, air defense systems across the entire Western Front. The bases we struck include Chaklala, Rafiki, and mind you, Chaklala is Islamabad. Rahim Yar Khan, Sakar, sending a clear message that aggression will not be tolerated. This was followed by strikes at Sargodha, Bholari, Jacobabad. We also struck the C2 centers at Murid, the UAE complex at Murid, Rafiki, radar at Chunia, which I will show you, Rahim Yar Khan airfield, and the unmanned combat aerial vehicle hangar at Sakar. I would like to reiterate here that we have the capability to target every system at these bases and more. However, it was only a measured response to instill good wisdom to our adversary to refrain from further escalation. IF response was directed only at military installations, avoiding civilian and collateral damage. I would now like to show you some of the effects that have been achieved as a result of our air operation. Here is the Pasrur air defense system. If you could see, zoomed up view, this is the radar mounted on a high tower. And after the strike, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. And after the strike, this is what has happened. This radar has been taken out, completely burnt. Next slide, please. The Chunia air defense radar, which was taken out on 7th and 8th. This is the radar site. A blown up photograph, once again, on a tower. Not very clear, but what you see very clearly is the after effect after we have struck. The radar head has been completely decapitated. Next slide, please. Arifwala air defense radar. In this complex, you see how it looked before, blown up image, and after really blown up. Next. Now coming to Sargodha airfield. Remember, this is one of their important airfields wherein they have a lot of assets, F-16s, other assets which they keep getting, training institutes. And we have stuck this airfield. It is not, if you zoom in here, then one impact point here on the runway and second impact point of our weapon, precision weapon on the runway. And if you see this blown up, repairing going on. Same here. Next. Rahim Yar Khan. This is the area we have struck. A deep strike out here and one complex here. So this is how it looked before, and same, you see a big crater, another crater here, and this complex after strike neutralized. Next. Chaklala airfield, Noor Khan, once again a major air base, a lot of their logistic assets out here. This was the chosen complex that we intended to strike and convey a message. Next slide, please. This is how it looked before, and this is how it looked after our strike. Next. Sakar. We chose the radar site at Sakar. This is the radar site, and after it was struck, this is the aftermath, completely burnt out. Next, please. Aircraft shelter. This is how it looked before the strike, and this is how it looked after the strike. The roof of the buildings completely caved in and burnt. Next. Bholari airfield, aircraft hangar. This is how it looked before, and this is how it looked after the precision strike. Next. Jacobabad aircraft hangar, and this is how it looked after. Next. So what I'm trying to convey here, ladies and gentlemen, is to start with, our fight was neither with the Pakistani military nor with anybody else who's there on the other side. Our fight was with the terrorists. We neutralized the terrorists that we selected to be neutralized, and thereafter we only maintained the air defense posture. However, we were relentlessly pounded by waves after waves, night after night, by his UCAVs, by his drones, and by his other unmanned aerial systems. And that left us with no choice but to retaliate, and yet our retaliation was calibrated, it was graduated, and it was proportionate. Thank you.